FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
So where does that leave us with the original question, the end of the free market? Well, I mean, there are sort of two answers to that. I mean, one is the smart-ass answer, of course, and the smart-ass answer as well is never really a free market anyway. Markets require institutions, they require regulatory frameworks, they require government, they require a whole bunch of other things. There's no such thing as a pure free market, therefore it can't come to an end. I think the more interesting argument is the one that I've been trying to give today, and that's that what we've seen certainly throughout the history of the 20th century and the earlier 21st century, is a rebalancing between the power of markets and the power of government. So if you think from the period at the end of the Second World War, where we learned the lessons of the great John Maynard Keynes and his fellow economists, through to the 1960s and the 1970s, when that old Keynesian consensus basically started to break down and give really poor economic results, we'd had a balance in favor of government. Through the 70s, after the 70s, we had the counter-revolution, if you like, led by the likes of Milton Friedman, and we had a rebalancing back towards the benefits of a greater role for markets relative to the role of government. We had the triumph, if you like, of deregulation and self-regulation. It's pretty clear, I think, now where we're at is that long process is again swinging back. The pendulum is now moving back. We're back to a world where government's re-regulation matters, where the balance of power has changed again. That's going to have a whole range of implications. And one of them, which is interesting, which we only thought about, we had an internal discussion yesterday, and I was thinking about, which is quite interesting, is, well, what does this do to Davos man, for example? And I think this has two offsetting effects here. The first effect is the great kudos and esteem which the captains of finance have been held in by governments is going to take a big hit after this. It's hard to look at these guys and say, well, you've just piloted us into the worst financial crisis since the 1930s, therefore you're the automatic people we go to for advice now. That shifted. On the other hand, the fact that now governments have been forced to get into the finance business means that the links between government and finance might actually get closer than they were in the past. So you've had two offsetting. The second, and this is where I'm going to leave it, I think it's the interesting and unanswered question yet, is that we don't, I don't think, have a completely credible theoretical framework for what comes next. And I've talked quite a bit about Malcolm. When you think about that revolution, first of all, the Keynesian revolution, you had a coherent theoretical argument. Keynes came out with and said, well, this is basically what we need to do to save the system from itself. When you had the counter-revolution, again, you had the free marketeers saying, well, this is why this process doesn't work anymore, why it's running into the ground. These are the clear things we need to do to switch us back. This time, we haven't really had that. There's a whole range of critics out there who are saying what's wrong with the current system. And there's a really broad spectrum from the economist critics, like the likes of a Stiglitz, through to the sort of the populists, the likes of a Naomi Klein or whatever. But finding sort of a coherent alternative program, certainly in the terms of the interventions we've seen so far, just isn't there, I don't think. It's pretty hard to see it. I mean, it's more sort of a technocratic response. Here are a series of market failures. We need to fix those and stitch those up. But it's not sort of a comprehensive, whole-scale, this is how we want to re-engineer the world. And I think the open question going forward is, do we get that? Because this crisis is so big and so deep, or do in fact we just stick with the technocratic responses? The thing that will determine that is how bad the real economy fallout from this is. In other words, how much does unemployment across the world go up as a result of this crisis? And the answer to that is, I don't know. And at that